Let's start with your name and your age.
Okay. My name is Micah Dailey-White, and I am currently 21 years old.
How would you describe the music that you make?
The music that I make, it's an ode to what was, but it's also the foundation of what I have a vision for. There's this specific genre of music that I discovered back in 18 or 19, called Japanese city pop, which, little background, in the 80s when Japan was having an economic boom, they wanted to make music that reflected the times, and they took huge inspiration from soul music, from American soul music from the 70s and 80s, like Michael Jackson's Thriller, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, basically all of Motown, and they created this genre that really did sound as though like you're just like everything is optimistic, you know, you're looking forward to the future, and it kind of has that knack because, you know, Japan has this unique futuristic presence to the rest of the world, and the fact that they chose to use, you know, that style of music to, you know, encapsulate those times, it has resonated with me, and, you know, I'm 21, you know, and it's like I would like to make music like that.
Is your first release, is that the one-on-one?
No, my first ever musical release is this song called Puppy Heartbreak, which is still up on SoundCloud. If you just search up Micah and then the words "Who's a Sad Boy?" parentheses Puppy Heartbreak, you'll hear the very first like official song that I've put out, and it is garbaggio. It is very bad. But at the time, I was so proud of it because it was the first song that I could honestly say I made from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything about that song. I mean, there was little loops here and there, but the writing, the songwriting, and the material, that was all me. And I'm still kind of proud of it, too.
Did you produce that beat yourself, too?
Yeah, on the Chromebook. It was like a really flimsy Chromebook that could only run like, for example, if you tried to just play Cool Math or play Tetris, you would have a hard time. There would be lag, so you can only imagine the headaches. At the same time, too, I've made some songs on BandLab, like, for example, Freaks, Paranoid. Those are two pretty popular songs of mine that were made on like basically a phone, recorded on the phone too. So yeah, it really doesn't, you know, at this point in society, it doesn't really matter like about the tools you have. It's just the delivery, what you put into the song.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really matters.
Yeah.
You know? Because you listen to early Beatles tracks, which were great, but you were listening to them with headphones. The drums are like right here, the vocals are like somewhere right here, and then there's like a random like clap or tambourine. It's just like sound design wise, it's just all over the place. Mm-hmm. It is not industry standard, but it is still really good music.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is behind that strength in like delivery, if that makes any sense? I can elaborate.
Well, we as human beings, we're emotional people, and when someone decides to put a certain emotion out onto a track and enough people listen to it and it resonates with them, then that's what makes the song. If you listen to, let me think, Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, just the instrumental, it's a really great track, but then you hear the vocals, that's when you're like, you listen to the lyrics, you listen to, you know, what makes a song human, and you're like, you sit back and you're like, wow, this is an experience. Music, it's love, it's anger, it's depression, it's vibration, right? It's sound, you know, it's everything. And us being vessels, we're instruments in our own right, you know. Like our heart has a beat, you know. We step, you know. Everything is like percussive. Everything is like a flute. That's how I see it, right? And at the same time, too, it's just more than music. It's just art. It's expression. It's what makes us human. So.
Was music your first form of creative expression?
I've always drawn and sketched, not as much as I used to. but I would always draw and make little comics and cartoons. Get it from my grandmother, rest her soul. I would always hang around with her, and just, I guess, at that time I just thought I was hanging out with her, but little did I know I was actually like, basically like creating like core aspects of myself were being discovered while I was with my grandmother.
When did you start making your own music?
I started making music in 2016 in middle school. We would go to the computer lab and just dabble with this online digital audio workstation called Soundtrap, but I didn't become serious about it until 2020. You know, during the pandemic, you're at home, there's not much to do, so I just really honed in on my craft, and you know, I saw a path with music making. So yeah.
When you first started getting into music, like in that workstation you're talking about, was it like something you did with your friends or something that you discovered yourself? Or
I've always been surrounded by music. My mother was a huge Michael Jackson fan. My biological father, he was basically in the industry. And then me moving with my aunt and my uncle at 8, they exposed me to Motown, which was basically the foundation of my musical taste. So it was only natural that I would, you know, try out making music.
did other people in your family gravitate towards making music or play any instruments?
Definitely on both sides. On my mother's side, more common, I believe all of my uncles and my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, they were all musicians. One that particularly stands out, his name was Uncle Roy, rest his soul. He was a bass player. And I think that's where my love for bass came from, because I don't know, just as a little kid, he was just playing and grooving. I would just be sitting there listening, and I'm like, wow, this is some really good stuff. But then on my father's side, my grandfather, he played the bongos, but he was into like really groovy musicians like Barry White, Marvin Gaye, and it passed down to my father, which passed down naturally, I think, to me.
Mm-hmm.
So on both sides of the family, there are musicians.
Do you feel like the music that you make follows a similar style of those earlier influences that you mentioned, or?
Definitely. For the longest time, I was completely into just old school music. I was kind of a critic towards new school music, and it was weird because I would throw off adults because it's like, this kid is 13 and 12 singing Ray Charles, right? You know? But as I grew older, and I realized like, hey, I'm in the modern era. There's nothing wrong with listening to modern music. I started listening to like the new age artists such as like Bruno Mars and Baby Keem, who else? Rihanna, Beyonce, but I still find myself very much so gravitated towards music of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, do you have any other influences, like from, I guess, like your deepest rooted influences?
My deepest rooted influences would definitely be Michael Jackson, but not all of Michael, specifically his Thriller era. Every time I listen to that album, it kind of humbles me, because there are moments where you think you make something like really good, and then you listen to Thriller and you're like, I'm not even close. Like, I know this is probably really cliche, but I believe Billie Jean is his best song. Like, I listen to it day, night, walking to school, just walking around. Him, Marvin Gaye, who I consider to be the king of soul. His music and his voice, it's very smooth, and his musical taste was very influenced by jazz and soul, and it was a nice blend of everything. But as it stands right now, I'm kind of getting interested into classic rock, which is, never thought that would be the case, because I never really listened to classic rock growing up, but now it's like I have a new appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are some examples?
Black Sabbath, but not necessarily like the artists and their discographies, but certain songs like Paranoid by Black Sabbath, All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix, even some of Prince's music, such as Soul Blue, which is my favorite song by Prince. I think my favorite classic rock song would have to be Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. Just sounds very live and rolling, you know. So
Do you feel like there's some ways that you embody your influences?
definitely, I've been told many times it's like, oh snap, that sounds like Michael, or wow, this sounds like the Police. The Police, they're my favorite band. I love the Police. Like I saw Sting live, and he's like well into his 70s, and he still is hitting those notes. And you know, little fun fact about Sting is like he used to be an English teacher before he even touched music. And so when you listen to his music, it's like, and you listen to his lyrics, I'm like, okay, I could totally see how he was an English teacher because he's very poetic with his language.
And you're from California, right?
I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I lived there for the first 7 years of my life. But then when I turned 7, I moved to California, and I lived there ever since. And I just recently moved back to Michigan. So
Moved back to Michigan, so when were you here before?
I was a recipient of a scholarship called the Posse Scholarship, which was a full tuition scholarship based on your leadership capabilities, and they chose the school for you. So once you receive the scholarship, they will assign you to a college. So I really had no choice. It was like early decision, and they felt as though Kalamazoo College would be the best pick for me. And so I was like, okay, hey, tuition's being paid for. I'm not arguing, you know. And so I flew there, you know, settled, you know, started my school year there. But, you know, for the first, I think freshman year, most of freshman year, I was just on campus. And once I started like making music and wanting to put my music out there, I didn't know like how to actually get into the music scene because nobody on campus really knew either. But it was like one of those moments of just like fate where a friend on campus, he knew Headband Henny, who is like a really great musician, really great person, great friend, almost like a brother to me. And we were playing ping pong, and you know, Henny's just like, yo, so you make music, bro? You make music, brother? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, that's tight. And he told me about all the events that go on in Kalamazoo. And I think the first event that I've ever performed here was Sounds of the Zoo. And this was, I believe, October of 2022. And after that, I started networking with musicians, and they said, yeah, we have house shows, and you know, you should definitely play, and we'll try to get you on a bill. And that's how I got in. So thank you, Headband Henny. Thank you, Abraham, too. That was the name of Henny, the mutual. That was the name of the guy who introduced me to Henny. Thank you, Abraham. That was a life-changing moment, you know, ping pong, which I say is like the greatest sport of all time. It's like, that's my version of golf. That's, you just talk business, just... So I was, you know, performing at house shows, you know, networking, getting to know like musicians, getting to know. Actually, I met my manager / friend Eric through a house show. It was a talent show night, and I heard his comedy, and I was like, this guy, he's really funny. And you know, once he was done with his set, we met after, and we just you know started having natural conversation, and I'm realizing like, wow, we have similar philosophies on life. That's how I always enjoy. That's how I always start my friendships. Right? What's your philosophy on life? I want to know what's your background. How do you view the world? How do you view the human experience? And it was basically like peanut butter and jelly with us.
And so you were kind of integrated into the house show scene, and then you left for a little bit, right?
Yes. In 2023, around springtime, I fell into a little social pressure and decided to take a psychedelic shroom. Anything that, you know, causes your brain to undergo like just change like that. It unlocks, or it exposes, or it pretty much exposes issues that you thought you dealt with. For some, once I took that psychedelic and I just started, you know, really sitting by myself and just thinking about life and all the decisions that everyone has made, and the decisions that I have made have led me to this moment. It was really eye-opening. I experienced an ego death, which is like you basically lose your sense of self. It was to the point, like at its peak, it was to the point where I threw away my debit card and my ID card because I was like, that's not me anymore. But obviously that was like a lie. I'm still Micah Dailey-White, evidently, right? As all of this was happening, my grandmother had passed, so now I'm dealing with grief of, you know, the loss of a family member. Really, she was a big reason why I'm still alive to this day. And so when she passed away, it was like, okay, you know, this is probably like the lowest point of my life. So I had to leave, you know, go back home to California, you know, rehabilitate. And once I did, you know, I felt as though, okay, I'm ready to come back to Kalamazoo and pick up where I left off. Yeah, it was a really pivotal moment in my life, which happened recently. Like, I think it's been a year, like a little over a year at this point. So, yeah.
Do you think, well, you call it pivotal. What good do you think that experience brought you?
Well, once I went back to California, I stayed at a homeless shelter for 8 months. And it was one of those butterfly effect situations where one decision leads to, you know, or a domino effect, whatever you want to call it. It led to so much happening. So, you know, while I was at that homeless shelter, I initially thought, okay, you know, this is not the space for me. You know, I was kind of just like, at that point I was actually like angry, but sad and depressed. I was just every negative emotion at that time. But the longer I stayed and the longer, you know, the more stories I heard about these guys who've all been down on their luck and they were all in the same place at the same time. And they've come from different walks of life. Like we had like veterans, you know, plumbers, and basically just like poetically, we had kings and peasants there, right? And they've all had that rise and their fall. So hearing their stories and, you know, like having a deep love for them because you could see that they wanted to change for the better, that basically just influenced me and had such an impact on my mindset, my outlook on life. Because I'm not gonna lie, like I had this very, very extremely ideal view of life where I thought everything was sunshine and rainbows almost. I kind of just neglected reality. But once I was exposed to reality, it was like a very like, okay, how can I contribute now? One moment that really stuck out with me was when I was going to the little market, which was like right down the street from the shelter, and you know, just getting something to drink, and I left and I see somebody sitting like farther away from the market, just like on the corner, and they had like a pipe in their hand, and you know, I get emotional just thinking about it because I didn't know what to do in that moment because it's like, you know, their mind was made up, right? So I just like gave him a bottle of water, and I just like, for the first time I looked in like his eyes, and I could see a similar hurt that I see with everybody and that I saw in myself during that time. And I was like, yeah, no, I refuse to live my life blissfully ignorant, you know? So, like I said, that was a very pivotal moment because it you know, it just made me feel, you know, it made me feel. That's something that I would have, that I would, you know, want. I don't understand, like, that's one of my biggest fears, just being apathetic, just being completely numb to the human experience. Like, I would love to feel, whether that's joy or whether that's tragedy. I'd rather feel than not, so, yeah. So I have, it's always a crazy number. I have 8 siblings, like, in total. Most of them are half. I only had one full brother by my biological mom and my biological dad. And at the age of 3, he was murdered. And my mother, she, you know, God bless her soul, I don't think she's ever recovered from that. And I'm thinking, this is just me, my 21-year-old mind, right? I still don't know anything. I just have an idea of what could have happened. I think that she thought that I would be like, kind of like a bandage or like the remedy to that hurt. But that wasn't the case. She did her best. and I have nothing but love for her, and you know, I would love to help out any way that I can, but that lack of, in the knowledge of, I could have had like an older brother, someone who lived life longer than me, who could have given me that advice, who could have said, you know, watch out, and not like the parental advice, because when we pretty sure, you know, everybody knows, like when your parents try to give you advice, you're like, you're kind of standoffish, but it's different when like a sibling or someone like a peer and a friend tells you don't do it, then it's like, okay, fine, you know, you guys have so much truth, wisdom. So I think that lack of siblingship has caused me to have this yearning for companionship. Everything that's happened family-wise, you know, it's all led to this moment, and it's nothing but love for them. I just want to keep going, you know, just keep going. I just want to say those were times, and it's time to move on. So, yeah.
Do you feel like making music has helped in that process?
Definitely, because music is the outlet in which I express my innermost thoughts and my innermost self. I thank God that He's blessed me like this creative ability this ability to create and make art. That's how I express myself. But at the same time too, I am just blown away by those who express themselves just like philosophy, who can articulate, you know, in-depth emotion, like psychologists and sociologists.
You were talking a little bit about how when you met Eric, you would talk about your philosophies of life.
Right.
And I'm curious about yours and how art ties into that.
Right. My philosophy, it's our philosophies. We share a very optimistic, but at the same time realistic philosophy. Like, we're not just like, world peace will be achieved. Everybody will hold hands in a large circle. No, we're very much aware that there are people, there are entities, there are like principalities and powers out there that are completely against that, you know, for reasons X, Y, and Z. But at the same time too, we're aware that like us being humans, us being people, we have an obligation to contribute to the betterment of society. And, you know, like I said, I'm a man of the faith, I'm Christian, so my ethics and my values are based on that. But at the same time too, there's something that we all have. Like, there's something that like we want to better each other despite what we believe. It's just, that's what makes us human. We don't want to see, I mean, some individuals do, but we don't want to see someone down and out and just, you know, basically kick them, right? We want to say like, let's help you up, you know? Let's, let's try to put our hands together.
Have you had somebody respond to something that you've created and explained how that experience might have been different for them than how you felt while you were making it?
Yeah, I make comedic videos on TikTok, right? Before anything, before drawing, before music, I've always just had this like loud, kind of just cartoony personality. And so it was only natural, like when I made the TikTok and it was like right timing and it blew up and I started making more TikToks. I'm not thinking anything of it. It's like, I find this funny, and I know TikTok is a great platform to put out funny, you know, right? But there's one dude, I think I'll keep identity, anonymous, but they reached out to me and they said, I'm paraphrasing, but they were like, your content is the reason why I'm not in the obituary right now. And it was like one of those moments where I'm like, wow, this is real stuff. You think nothing of it. You think, it's a joke, right? But to some, it's like a little laughter, keeps you away from the edge of the cliff, right? And once I saw that, and I get emotional talking about it, it's just like, man, I am contributing. Because there are moments where I'm like, I'm a comedian, musician, society can do without me, right? And, who would want, a fool talking at all? But after that, it's like, okay, I can continue being me. So, yeah.
What's something that you've made that you feel like you're most proud of?
The album on SoundCloud, Micah, self-titled, album, simply because it's basically just me out there, right? Me while I was at my lowest point. I was at the homeless shelter when I put that album out. And so certain songs were made like a couple of years ago, but then the majority of those songs were made like while I was at the shelter. And I had nothing else to lose. I put it out there, and initially it was like, you know, it was cool, but it was like a cool reciprocation. Like little people liked it, but then once the success on TikTok bled over to SoundCloud, it's like now everybody's like, whoa, this is like another aspect of Micah that we've never seen before, which is like, it's scary because it's like, okay, how do you guys, you know, feel, right? You know, but they're just like, when is this gonna be on Spotify? And I'm like, okay, this is cool, you know, because like people are like, I want to put this on my playlist, and I don't want to have to use SoundCloud for it. I just want to like open Spotify and just play it, right? So I think I'm most proud of that. But I think more than anything, like what I'm most proud of is the fact that I didn't let everything that's happened to me choke me, keep me down. Because there are moments, I have major depressive disorder, and so there are moments where like I'll wake up and just like completely just out of energy already, just wanting to just stay in the bed forever. And then there are moments where I just have to like force myself to just get up. I don't let that keep me down. Like I said, I just have to keep going. And that's something my aunt has noticed. She said like, you have a resilience to you. And I think that's just my family on both sides, because we've been through the gutter, you know? And so I think, you know, God, that he's given me that resilience.
Resilience is the word that was popping in my mind while you were talking about that too.
Yeah, it's you know, initially I thought like, man, I have so many bags under my eyes from just many like nights just staying up until 4 a.m. or whatever. But, you know, at this point it's like, these are battle scars, you know, because it's like life is not peaches and cream. Life is very morbid and very melancholic and mundane. So yeah, this is proof that like I'm still fighting. So yeah, I used to go under this I used to go under this name Old Trey, which at the time I thought that was like the coolest name. It means beyond in Italian, and for a time it pretty much that was it, right? But after everything that happened last year, and then, you know, I was gonna get rid of TikTok. I was literally just gonna delete like the app on my phone. But before I did, I just changed my username to just Micah Dailey-White, right? Just in case somebody came across the profile, they'll be like, "Oh snap! You know, this is what Micah was doing," right? But I made one TikTok that was like really stupid. It was just like iron deficiency gang, stand up. And for those of you guys who don't understand, like if you have iron deficiency and you stand up, you become lightheaded and you literally become dizzy. So the joke was like iron deficiency gang, like rise up, and then I just like fell backwards. And I didn't think anything of it. Next thing you know, I wake up, it was like the same day, like a couple hours passed by, it's already like at 2 mil. I'm like, whoa. But it was under the name Micah Dailey-White. And you can't change your username for 30 days. So I'm like, shoot. And so it was kind of like this smooth transition from Old Trey, whoever that was, to who I am, who I've always been, which was Micah Dailey-White. So I just kept making content under that name and released the project that just says Micah, right? And at first I really didn't like the name. It just sounded like, I said this before, like who would buy a Micah Dailey-White ticket, right? But now it's like, people would actually buy a Micah Dailey-White ticket. And I'm like, this is some crazy stuff, you know, that I'm still trying to like really process, because it's like I've dealt with self-loathing for so long, and the fact that other people are seeing what I haven't seen, it's like, oh shoot, give me new insight, please. I want to learn more about myself through how you guys perceive me. So, you know, fill in the gaps, you know, so. Yeah.
How do you feel like your comedic persona might differ, if it differs, from like your stage presence or how you carry yourself normally?
I took a sociology class in freshman year, and the professor had us read this really old book called Goffman's Presentation of Self, which was like, who are you? Basically, like when we come into contact with another individual, we kind of highlight specific aspects of ourselves to be accepted, and we diminish other aspects of ourselves to be to avoid being rejected, right? Whereas at that time, I'm like, that makes so much sense about me. So everything, like I said, that happened last year, and having that ego death and basically rebuilding like who I am, I realized like, no, if you meet me, let's say like if I just come across a stranger on the street and we had like a really brief conversation, and I want them to like really know in that little short time frame, like this is 100% me. There's nothing that I'm trying to hide, and whatever your interpretation of that interaction was, that's on you. But for me, it's like, gotta give 100% or zero. I think one of my favorite quotes was from Quincy Jones, who's like my favorite producer. He's the guy behind Thriller and Miles Davis and Ray Charles and Frank Sinatra. His father said, whatever the task, great or small, do it well or not at all. Quincy, I'd like to meet you, man.
I'm curious how making music shifted after the experience you had, like about a year ago, like you said.
Great question. Before my experience last year, the music that I would make was very ideal. But after that experience, it was like I realized that the best musicians, the best artists, they're genuine. You know, they like some of my favorite music came from moments of heartbreak, moments of pain. And after I had come to that realization, I was like, oh, something clicked. Like the gear started shifting. I'm like, oh, okay. What if I tried that? Like one of my most personal songs as it stands right now is called Paranoid, which basically was like my expression and my interpretation of everything that happened last year, because there were really weird moments that I can't explain to I don't think I'll ever be able to fully explain to anyone, not even my own parents. But so I tried to just put it in a way, like if someone were to listen to that song, they'll be like, wow, I've been there. Because the lyrics go like, I've had so many sleepless nights and I don't know what to do. And it's like, I've read the word and realized that they're always out to get me. Them being like principalities and powers, and you know, these spiritual battles that you have between light and darkness, and it's just all, it's like a Twilight Zone. That's how it feels, or like Truman Show, where it's like moments happened last year where I'm like, what the heck? That's really trippy. So when I made Paranoid, it was like, yeah, and then people really said like, wow, this is a really good song. And at first they were just into it because of the beat, but then they started reading the lyrics and they're like, whoa. It gave them even more appreciation for the song, which I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I was going for. So
yeah, I was gonna ask about like your lyricism and the part that it plays in your music, whether that is something that you think about in depth while you're making music, or is it more of, can it be an afterthought, or is there always intention behind it?
For me, I'm music heavy. Like I produce first, then I write to the music. Like I've tried writing just first, I have to have direction. And for me, direction is music. But when I do make a beat, it's already what I'm like trying to put out, like what I'm trying to say. So Paranoid, as I was making it, I was like, okay, this is dark and mysterious, and it's like, you know, even just the way it sounds, it's like you're tiptoeing somewhere, or like you're walking at night by yourself. So if you took the vocals and the lyrics out from the song, you can get an idea of what I'm trying to talk about. Do
you always start producing with like an emotion or a feeling or a concept in mind?
For me, when I make anything or when I listen to music, it's all about atmosphere. Like for example, like I love 80s music because it was just rich in atmosphere. Like when I listen to Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper, I think the song is about heartbreak, or it's about like just like letting like a bittersweet ending to a really weird relationship. But at the same time, it's the instruments too. It's like the 80s synthesizer, and it's like the Lynn drum, and it's the lyrics too. She says, "The second hand unwinds," which a song is about time, and I'm like, but it's also about bittersweet heartbreak. I'm like, that is insane writing. How could you even think the second hand unwinds? That's insane. What else? What's another really great song that has like really great lyricism? I'll just bring up Billie Jean because that's like my favorite pop song ever. It's just it sounds so poetic, but you realize that this is a song basically. It's like a man a paternity denial. Like, that kid is not my son, and he's telling the story about, oh, she was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. I said, don't mind, but what do you mean that I am the one who will dance on the floor in the round? It's like, what does that even mean? But with the beat and the context, it's like, oh shoot, that's what it means. It's a really great song. But when you can create like that, that's the type of creating I'm trying to get to. That's the type of creativity that I aspire to get to. And I feel like I'm making some progress. Baby steps, though. Baby steps.
When you're seeking to kind of like feed your creative soul, where do you go to do that?
Where do I go? It doesn't really matter about location to me. It's just where I'm at. Like I said, atmosphere. Like when I listen to, like for me, like I'm very pop heavy, but I'm also into like songs that just blow up for no reason. Like I Dress, that song Jealous. I listen to it, I'm like, I can totally imagine myself like in a weird, like dark, moody room, or like an indoor skate park, and it's like weird, like blue tainted lights, and I'm just like skating, and I'm just like thinking about life. And that's like how I aspire to make my music. So before production, before lyrics, it's atmosphere. Like, what do I want to convey with a song? Mm-hmm. So for Paranoid, and I usually start by beatboxing, so I'm in my head, and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm like, okay, I can put that down there. And one thing, like if I have an idea and I'm not, near a computer, I'll just record it on my phone. But then as soon as I get home, bust out the laptop, turn on FL Studio, and just add the bass and the drums. I'm like, okay, yeah, we going there. And it's like painting. It's really just like painting, So I start off with like a nice bass line, a nice drum beat, and then I'm like, okay, I like where this is going. Let me add something else. And I add like a key or a string. And that's that's another philosophy that I have too. If you can hum a song or whistle it, that's how you know it's in. If you can get into that psyche where it's like people are walking down the street and like they're humming the song, that's awesome. So yeah, my process is just, how can I make this song as human as possible and make it reflect nature, make it reflect the experience, make it reflect just reality. That's why I always say, like, you can't really, there's no formula to making a hit song. It's just perfect timing, I'm a man of the faith, giving it to God and letting him do the rest.
You're just recently starting to play with a full band now, right?
Yes.
What inspired that change?
Honestly, that was pretty much all Henny. Like, I didn't reach out to anybody. I think he said like, we could hit up this really great guitarist. His name is Dawu. We could hit up Dawu. He say like, could you play guitar? And so he reached out, and Dawu like, yeah, I'm down. And so that's 2 people in the band. And I think, well, okay, need a drummer. And he basically, I think he connected to AJ. It's like, maybe you need another guitarist, and got Andrew. And then, we need a keyboardist. Who we gonna find? Shai Lee. And so that's how it pretty much happened. He did all that. I was just like, all right, cool. This is nice, because I'm used to just performing like over tracks, like just performing backing tracks. But Henny was like, really, like, you have to do a live set. You have to do a live set. So once again, thank you, my brother, because it was a killer show at Ups. It was a really phenomenal set. And they're the type of musicians where I initially thought I would have to teach them the ins and outs of the song. I would play it, and I was like, okay, so we're gonna start off here, right? And they'll be like, oh, you mean like? They'll start playing like all crazily, and the drummer's going like, hey, they're just like going crazy, and we were just like, chilling and just guitaring, just like with like this cool look on his face, and Andrew's going crazy, and they're like that, Micah, and I'm like, yeah. So yeah, it's just like they pretty much didn't really need much. They're that skilled. And ironically, or not even ironically, like oddly enough, it's like I am amazed by that. Even though you're like, but you're a musician too. I'm like, no, like they get it. Like musically, they can just improvise, and like everything is jazz to them almost. So it blows my mind. I can like beatbox and find loops and like produce, but to do that on the spot, amazing.
Do you have any projects that you're working on that you'd want to talk about?
Yeah, working on this one project, keeping it under wraps because I would like to surprise everyone. But it will be one of, if not like my best work, because I'm putting 110%. I'm at a space and at a moment in my life where I can do that. Like I have no other obligation except create. So I want my entire schedule to just be that and get this out done and put it out there. Hope for the best.
How is the process of making this differed from what you've done in the past?
It's different because now there's timelines. Now that I have a producer, it's no longer just me doing it all. It's like now I have a team. So each song we're gonna make, it's not just gonna be me, it's gonna be everybody. You can tell like when a song is made by multiple people or there's multiple like inputs on the song, it becomes just more like it helps like us, all of us people just to come together to really listen to it because it's like different perspectives on one song, So it's gonna be fun.
Who is helping you produce these days?
His name is John Morabito, and he just opened his studio, but Eric introduced me to him before he opened the studio. And John, he is a very, very good musician / producer. He does his own sound design too, so he'll just bring up a synthesizer and just, you just pitch with the oscillator here, and then you put the LFO. And at the same time too, he's a rock star. He can just play rock, he plays funk. That's what I'm into. Versatility, doing multiple genres, because I don't ever want to be defined by one genre. I know I'm gonna be defined by like just pop, just because it's just like for the sake of time, because like, what are you gonna call this? Oh, I don't know. Just call it pop for now, right? But we're gonna have fun. It's like we're on the playground, honestly, or like we both have like a canvas, a huge canvas, and now we're just like painting.
How do you continue to validate yourself to keep creating?
That's a really good question. How do I continue to validate myself to continue creating? For me, it's not about validation. It's more so like this is what I know how to do. Whether or not it's valid or not, it doesn't really matter to me. It feels more so like this is my duty. This is the skill set that I've been blessed with. Who am I to neglect it? How dare I? I have to get things out there. I don't know who I'd be if I just didn't do it. So it's more than just validation. It's just, this is, I don't know, fate almost. So yeah, that's a really good question. That was a really good question. Yeah. Thank you. That was a good question.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people who might get easily discouraged if what they're making is not being exposed to as many people as they would hope, and seeking that validation externally. And I think that a lot of the time the most influential people, that's not even on their radar.
You captured a lot. You captured a lot. I thought you were gonna ask me a question like, "Oh, what's your favorite color?" I'm like, blue. What's your favorite animal? Like Asian short-clawed otter, which that is my favorite animal. If you ever seen one, you'll understand. They're like so adorable. They make the craziest sounds like it's weird, but then they have like a squeal too, like oh, it's like a cat dog, and it's like it can swim too. It's like the perfect animal. See, I'll show you. I have a ton of Asian short claw videos.